Hi guys, how's it going? I'm back this week with another review. It's been a while since I've done a review, and honestly, this week has been really busy, but luckily we got 4 days off. We had like a long weekend, so I was finally able to catch up on my reading on Saturday and Sunday. It's obviously not Tuesday, but I did actually finish my book that I was reading last week only yesterday, and that is um, Island of a Thousand Mirrors by Nayomi Munaweera. She's my first Sri Lankan author that I've read, and I thought I was gonna have like mixed feelings when I did this, like read this book, because I didn't actually know what the book was about until I started reading, and like it didn't even say it on the blurb of the book what the content was going to be. So I didn't have any like expectations or anticipations on what it was. But as soon as I started reading, like I kind of got the gist of it because it was talking about the early 1970s, 1980s. And I realized that the early 1980s, 1970s was definitely when the Civil War was starting. And a little background to the Civil War is between the Sri Lankan government or the state, but it was actually not even started. It was started by like a political faction called the JVP, and they're very inhuman. Like I'll get to that when I'm like in the middle of like the review or whatever. But they're terrible people, to sum it up. And between the Tamil citizens, which the Tamil citizens are mostly located in the north, which is Jaffna. And so, but like obviously, there's people that live in Colombo. They like interchange between certain cities. So that's the gist of it. Like there was just it's based on racism and discrimination. So when I started reading this book, I was actually like swept away about like how beautiful the imagery was. Like that one, I did expect because the reviews said there was like striking imagery and it was very beautifully written, and it 100% is, because the author brings to life the country in a way I've never expected. Like there are days when I look outside when it's raining and it's just beautiful green, and this like the rain is falling, and it feels like home. You know, like I've never felt that anywhere else. But when you sit and watch the rain in Sri Lanka, it feels so beautiful, so calming. And she captured all of that through all of the five senses. She brought to life like the food that your mom would be cooking, or she brought the sounds of the street, the buses, the birds, the people chattering, because Sri Lanka is so busy. It's always like there's always noise. So when you don't hear any noise in Sri Lanka, it's like, what's going on? But that's only when it's like during the longer holiday seasons, when it's like the New Year or the like, you know, Christmas time or whatever. That's the only time that it's quiet. So she brought to life all of those things with her words. And later on, I realized like halfway through that the book is actually split into two perspectives. One of the girl whose name is Yashodhara, and the other girl is Saraswati. So Yashodhara is a Buddhist girl, I believe, but she's of a singular descent, and you can see like how different her upbringing is in Colombo. Like I would say they're from a middle class family in Sri Lanka. Even at that time, I believe it was middle class, living in a coastal area. And you've got Saraswati living in Jaffna, in the villages, and all of like, you know, the contrast. But you really see the contrast of the characters and like the girls when they come into their own. So Yashodhara was lucky enough to have the full educational experience of going to school, of traveling around this country, seeing people, meeting people when she was around the age of 16, 17. And then when the war actually started getting bad, and the war actually started getting bad when the JVP, those criminals, started cutting people up on the road. And this is a story I got from one of my like, so she was a helper around the house. She would say that they used to storm into her house and like see if there was any Tamil citizens living in there, and they would try to pull them out, drag them out. But the ones that weren't lucky, the ones that didn't escape during that time, they would get chopped up. They would get they would be set on fire. And another one of my friends, she said her dad, her mom's dad used to be a planter in hill country, Nuelia, and during that time, because most of the workers in Nuelia are like Tamil, they would cut up, like they would behead these Tamil citizens, and they would put these heads on spikes for people to see. But anyone that's helping Tamil citizens, like Sri Lankans, Buddhists, anyone that they find is helping a Tamil citizen, they would immediately like execute on the spot, or they'll do something. So that's the kind of like time that was. So Yashodhara was able to escape and she was able to go overseas to the United States, where she became like, she got to study, went to high school, she went to like college. So she gradually grew up being able to experience the luxuries of becoming a woman, or intimacies of becoming a woman on her own free will. So she was able to experiment, she was able to like meet different men. Cut to Saraswati, who grew up in a small house with her mom, her dad, her sister, and two older brothers. But the thing, and one younger brother. And the issue is, Saraswati's two older brothers were taken by the LTTE. So that's the movement. That represented the Tamil citizens at the time. And this is going to be a really controversial video if anyone from Sri Lanka sees it, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion, right? So basically, this family of five. One, two, three. Yeah, of five kids. Two of them were taken by the LTTE. The older boys were taken. They couldn't find the bodies, because once you go into war, the chances of you coming back alive, you seeing your children, very slim. And then finally, they took the youngest son as well, because he was, I think, 14 at the time, and they had said he's old enough. Then they came for, well, they had come and said she is 16 years old. She's almost a woman. She can represent, like, the selling point there was women can fight just as good as men. And look, women can contribute just as equally as men in a war. And we've seen that during World War II, where women stepped up. They moved into the engineering fields, mechanical fields. They went into the Air Force. They did all of that. So she didn't want to go, because she wanted to teach. She wanted to get her teaching certificate. She wanted to teach the kids in her village and give them a chance to become something different with their lives. But before that could happen, she was taken, dragged out of her house by Sri Lankan Sinhala soldiers, and she was. Am I allowed to say that on this? I might have to bleep it out, but she was taken by force. And she held that with her as she joined the movement. She didn't want to join the movement before this, but in all fairness, being a woman myself, and I don't see any issues with that, because if someone's done wrong to you, 100% you'd want to take revenge on that. The kind of things that women experience in war are completely different to the experiences men experience in war. So I felt extremely broken. I felt broken at that time reading it as a woman. And that's how like the story kind of ends, with Saraswati joining the movement, her losing her life, Yashodhara living her life. Still, she's lost during the war, but she hasn't lost as much as Saraswati did. Saraswati ended up losing her life, giving up her life for the movement. She was a suicide bomber. Fun fact, I don't know if it's a fun fact, but Sri Lankans, so the LTTE actually made suicide bombing a thing. We were famous for it. I think that's where the rest of the terrorist organizations took the term. Not great to be known by for the country, but obviously that was a long time ago. We don't have that now. Sri Lanka's been safe since 2009, but what really irks me about this is those criminals, the JVP criminals that operated and did this to the country with their disgusting ways of their horrible, horrible nature that ruined a country, sent it into 30 years of war, ruined people's lives. I realized would be about 1980s. They would be about 20s. The men who did this, they would be about 20s, 30s back then, which means they're my dad's age now. They're about 60, 65. These people, they never got caught. They never went to prison for the crimes that they committed. They did not pay for their sins. And that, like, I was sitting there and I thought about, like, I was reading this and I thought about it and I was like, yuck. Like, these are criminals. They're on the streets every single day, knowing full well that they have killed people for nothing other than race. And that is disgusting. Like, there is a special place in hell for people like that. And I really, really hope and pray, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter if it's a parent, a teacher, a lawyer, does not matter. They need to pay for their sins. If they don't pay it in this life, they're going to be paying for it in the next. Because people didn't deserve to be discriminated against and killed for their race and the color of their skin. And this whole story actually starts around the color of skin. And I want to read like a line to you guys because this book triggers a lot of insecurities in me as well, because obviously I'm quite dark skinned. I'm considered dark skinned in my own country, and it's been a thing for as long as colonialism has been around. So because white was what was considered beautiful, despite the fact that this is a tropical nation, you go into Sri Lanka, most of the time you're going to see people that look this color, maybe darker, maybe a little shade lighter, but you're not very often going to see people with the same shade of white as you would see a British, a Portuguese, or a Dutch. So this whole colorism thing really triggers me because when I was born, I'm pretty sure these are the same feelings that went through the minds of my relatives. So here we go. If only it had been the boy who was so dark, this black girl. We will never get her married. To which her mother joins, a darky granddaughter, such a shade we have never had in our family. I was the darkest girl in my family. I still am, but the fact is, it'll never change. And there's more about the same girl who was dark skinned. This is how to change her skin color. Rub a coconut husk on her. River sand is better. Bathe her in buffalo milk. Grind turmeric and spread it all over her. My sister's girl was black like that. So these are the same things that people actually still say. I don't know if they'll say it in the open, but a lot of people, like, even when I go to work and stuff, and I've specifically asked my staff not to talk about people's appearances, their weight, their height, their color, their marital status, none of that. But obviously it's instilled in them in certain ways, so they don't stop. But this time I went to work and I was on holiday a few weeks before, right? So I was out in the sun, sunbathing. I got crisp. And came up to me and she was like, "You've gotten a little darker this time, haven't you?" And I was like, "Yep." Went into the sun. Yep. But getting dark in this country is apparently frowned upon, despite the fact that it's 36 degrees on most days. Today there's cloud cover, but most of the days it's 36 degrees. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm gonna get black regardless of like what I do or not. Sunscreen only works so much. This book triggers a lot of insecurities in me, and I think this is the most amount of tags I've ever put on a book. So the blue ones are up here. These are all war crimes and like it goes both ways, from suicide bombing to taking women by force to beheading, all of that. The orange and green ones are, the orange ones are like the representation of the island. I don't want to ruin the book for everyone by reading it out loud, but this book really triggered a lot of emotions in me, and I cried at the end of it because people people didn't deserve to live that kind of life back then. These are things that could have easily been avoided had they been better human beings. But I guess everywhere in the world there are people that are racist, prejudiced against other people for no other reason than the fact that they look different compared to them. But if you had an ounce of education, or if you weren't a terrible human being, you'd realize that this world is not made to look exactly like everyone else. Each individual has their own upbringing. No one in the same family is going to look the same, unless, obviously, unless if they're like identical twins or whatever. But everywhere in this world, people are different, cultures are different, experiences are different. Embrace it. Embrace the differences. Like, what is so difficult about that? I don't go to a different country expecting it to be the same, to eat the same food, to see the same people. Like, what is the point? I want to see different things in my lifetime. I want to experience different people, different experience, like different cultures. That is the whole point. This is, it's it's amazing to have these differences. To not embrace it, to see the differences and be like, ew, let's kill you. What what for what? I would get a lot more mad if I wasn't recording this. I would say a lot more stuff that was going through my head if I didn't have to put this on YouTube. But like, I was angry. I was angry and I was fed up because when I was growing up, I still lived through the war, right? I didn't get the worst of it, obviously, because I was still small, and the war ended when I was 2009. So I think I was like 13 or 14 when the war ended. But I remember back then, this is a story of my own now, just like drifting off. I remember they used to have the box planes that would come and they would fly so under the radar. This is coming from the north of Jaffna. They're coming into Colombo and stuff, and they have their targets, right? I think one of them was the Inland Revenue Department. They have the politicians, they have the parliament, they have the fuel tanks, all of those. So those are like the targets that they have. And this one time, the one I remember so well is that there had been a warning that these flights are coming in, and what they do is they black out the entire city. So everything in Colombo or whatever regions is completely blacked out. So they don't know where they're landing. So they lose complete track of whatever, because they don't. I don't think they have the signal properly to see where the location is. So they'll black it out, and we would go out onto the balcony just to see like what's going on, because that's the only place there's a bit of light from the moon. What they would do is you can see the lights going from, they're shooting at these planes, the military is shooting from these the planes, so you can see the fire going up and you can see the plane just explode. And like, that's happening maybe 20-minute drive away from, not, yeah, about 20-minute drive away from our house, because you can see so clearly like the plane just, and it was so much worse for our parents because back then there wasn't military control, there wasn't like a proper government in place that took care of these things and took care of the citizens. So what happens is like my parents weren't able to go to school properly. It was dangerous for them to like step onto the road. I don't think my mom was okay. Like, safety of women were definitely a concern at that time. But the only incidents I've experienced from like this is we had a bomb warning once at school. They said like any kind of school might be bombed today, so they had to close our schools for a while. I was in Kandy, and we have like the most holy place in Sri Lanka, and that's the Tuthra Lake Temple. And there was a bomb scare at that on that day because it was like a full moon day, and obviously we worship full moon Poya days, and we had to struggle out. Like, everyone was shaking. My dad was panicked, my mom was panicked, I was sweating, and I'm like, why? But So those are the things I remember from the war, which weren't as bad. I'm pretty sure my parents saw a whole lot more growing up. 1980s, my dad and my mom were like just coming into their 20s. They were just starting to date. Unfortunate that this is how people meet in relationships in the middle of a war, but here we are. So this book, I give a 10 out of 10 because it evokes a lot of emotions. It touches on a lot of social points that are taboo. It touches on human flaws. It touches on human emotions and the fact that people can be really, really shit. This is Nayomi Munaweera's Island of a Thousand Mirrors. It's based on Sri Lanka. It is a book I recommend with my whole heart. If you don't fall in love with the island based on her writing, I don't know what to tell you, but yes, grab it if you can. Moving on to something a little more fun. This is my book for this week, and so far it's going good. I'm already on chapter 4, I think. It's the Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. There's a bit of familiarity with her. Oops. There's a bit of familiarity with her writing. It's easy to read. It's straightforward. I like the topics. I like the characters so far. When I say familiarity of her writings, I think I'm talking about how easy it is for it to register the personalities of the characters in my head, because I feel like I've read these kinds of books so much now. It's an enemies to lovers kind of book, but the thing I like the most is that in both, so there's two stories going across. There's going to be Noah and George's story going on. There's also Scarlett and Jameson's story going on. In both of these instances, both the guys, they fell first and they fell hardest, I want to say. So I'm looking forward to reading this book. I think I should be able to finish this by Friday because I'm already like almost halfway, not halfway through. I'm like on page 50. Whew. I thought this was going to be a longer video than this, but I'm glad it wasn't. It's a heavy video, wasn't it? Yeah. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing or hearing what you guys think of this video. And as always, I will see you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your week.